Welcome to Steward Leaders, a podcast for leaders who understand that our leadership is not about us. I'm Eric Alexander. In these conversations, we explore what it means to lead as stewards, living our leadership for something bigger than ourselves. Listeners, thanks for joining us again for another Steward Leaders conversation, and I'm excited to have Christopher Williston here for another conversation too. Thanks so much for joining us, Christopher.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So we're having these conversations back to back. You listeners will see them with a little more space in between, but you're going to really like hearing from Christopher. If you haven't listened to the previous one, finish this one first and go back and listen to that. You don't want to miss it either. We did a deep dive on stewardship there, talked about community banking, but it has lots of application for stewardship in all kinds of places. Let me tell you about Christopher. He's a friend, he's a father, he's got 6 kids, and so as a father of 6 kids, that's a point of relationship and related worlds, although his kids are the ages of my grandkids. And I'm working backwards this time, Christopher. He's a TCU grad. He has some banking experience back when he was in school, did some student ministry along the way. Right now, he's serving as the president and CEO of the Independent Bankers Association of Texas, IBAT, which puts on training, conferences, does advocacy, creates a place for people to gather and talk about banking. And so I've gotten to know him there, grateful for him, grateful for that organization. Hello, Christopher. You can talk now.
All right, perfect. I was trying to think what else I could throw into the mix here, but no, I think you did a phenomenal job, and it's a joy to get to do what we do, and most of all to get to know people like yourself.
Well, you're gracious. I really enjoyed, that's one of the things I've enjoyed about IBAT. It's been very helpful professionally, but also just lots of neat people. And that's where I want to go today. We just finished talking about stewardship. I want to talk now about culture and where stewardship and culture intersect. And you know, I've had some conversations on this before. You see lots of things in different organizations, but I want to start by talking about the IBAT culture. And I don't know it as well as a lot, but I've been to enough events and interactions over the last several years that I've got a pretty good sense that y'all have a high energy, fun, strong customer service culture that's touching lives of community bankers in practical ways. And
Thank you.
I enjoy being around your folks.
You know, that's when you hear that as a leader, that's exactly what you want. Pete, it's almost like someone bragging on your kids. That's exactly what you want to hear, and I know you're not just saying it. So thank you.
I'm not just saying that. I have experienced that, and I'll be at a conference in 3 weeks. Get to see your team again.
You said something though I disagree with. You said you don't know it as well as others. I think you know it about as well as anyone can, being an outsider. You know, you're part of the IBAT family. You're an extremely important part of the IBAT family. You're someone that we lean on as a trusted educator, as a trusted speaker at events. Somebody that, you know, honestly, if we dropped you into the middle of a staff dinner, probably take half the dinner and we go, oh, Eric, like we didn't even realize, you know, you just think of, there's people you think of as just comfortable part of the family. And so I do think you know it. I think you know it about as well as anyone, at least know this iteration of the IBAT staff and our crew as well as anyone. That's, you know, all the things you just said. What I hope they're indicative of, and what I want, you know, people to know about why we work, and we work in a really funky little way. We're sort of, you know, we're this 30-person team that's entirely remote in the way that we work. But somehow we've still found a way to thread the needle of a really collaborative culture. High trust, high responsibility is the way that I describe it, which I think you have to be when you work in a fully remote environment.
Right.
And more than anything, I've got to say, I think culture comes back to stewardship in our previous conversation, because if I have the mindset that I am here as a steward, just with a time-bound responsibility to serve the people that we serve, and to do it in a way with integrity, with deep embodiment of passion for what they do, for respect for what they do, for a desire to perform from them, what I hope is that flows down from the top, and that everybody else on the team then embodies that culture as well, and that we're all feeding off of each other in that process. And I think that feeding off, boy, you can feed off each other and get all kinds of junk, and you
Right.
can feed off each other and get all kinds of positive. And
Right.
my hope is what I'm feeding is the positive. Doesn't always work out that way,
Right.
yeah, but you hope, and that's what you work towards in building a team.
Well, that flowing down from the top, and you went to an important clarification there. Whatever's at the top flows
Yeah,
down. Leadership shows, good and bad. And so I've complimented your team. That is a compliment to you
it
because
is.
it's not like you just walked in the door. This is a
No.
team you've been leading and shaping for a while.
Yeah,
I'm going to guess, I don't know, probably 23% of your life.
yeah.
If I'm doing the math close to right, yeah,
You're better at math than I. That's about right.
it's
Yeah,
about right.
yeah,
So you as a leader have an effect on the culture. That's a given. And that's pretty sobering too. And it really ties right back into what we just talked about with stewardship. You are a steward of your influence as a leader and what that does to the culture, for good and
yeah.
bad.
It is hard, and I think there's a certain amount of transparency that has to come with that. There's a certain
Mm,
amount of grace that has to come with that, and I've asked for grace at times. There's this balance. You're absolutely right. This is a team that I built. If you look at the IBAT that existed eight years ago when I started as CEO and the one that exists today, they're two very, very different teams, different emphasis on skill sets, different emphasis on personalities. It's man, if it's broken at this point, I own it, right? I can nobody to blame at this point. It does allow you to be, when it is working, you go, man, I'm proud of that. There's two things though that happen simultaneously. Number one, as a leader, you're always focused on the thing out there that's a threat, that's difficult. I think it's always our responsibility, especially in the role that I have to be looking around the corner, trying to identify the thing that's coming that could be existentially threatening or just, moderately threatening, whatever it is. And it's so easy to let that burden, maybe flow down, or just like you get stuck in it as a leader,
mm,
focused on the difficult things or the hard conversations that are happening right now that maybe the staff isn't aware of. So trying to find that balance of you want to be honest about that as a leader. You want it to be transparent in some ways about that, but you don't want to freak people out, nor do you want to be negative. You don't want to be overly negative or influence the culture negatively. So you're always balancing that.
right.
You're also always looking, as good as things are, you're always looking at the margins and just
Right.
going, but that one thing out there, I wish was a little bit better. I wish that relationship between that person, those departments, that thing, wish it was a little bit better.
I wish
One of
that
our,
coffee was just a little bit warmer.
just
I
a
wish
little
the
warmer.
rooms were not hot.
So cold.
Yeah.
I really
As a
wish.
speaker, I'd prefer a little bit cold than any bit
Cold.
hot.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of the things that I come back to with our team a lot is to say, thank God for that problem. And thank
Mm,
God that that's the problem we're focused on today. Because we sat in this room 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, we were talking about totally different problems.
mm,
In some ways, far more severe problems.
right.
And today we're not. And so we're always going to have a something that we're focused
Right.
on that we're trying to fix.
But let's celebrate where we've come from.
Thank God it's not the same thing it was 5 years ago.
Yes. Well, just notice the problems I listed were all
Yeah.
comfort issues. You
Yeah,
went straight
right.
to the important
Exactly.
things like relationships and serving our people, and I went to I'm hot and the coffee's cold.
You will appreciate this, given your background. We finished the audit of our
Mm,
organization, our 2025 audit recently, and I got on the team with finance, or got on a call with finance team, and I just said, "Thank you. Um, I don't live in your world all day, every day. I don't, because of your work, I don't have to live in your world all day, every day. I have visibility into it, but I don't have daily exposure to it.
right.
But thank you so much for coming out squeaky clean on the audit, taking care of business, doing what you do with excellence every day, because there are a lot of leaders that are mired in just trying to clean up financial processes.
Yes.
There's a
Yes.
lot of leaders that are just literally trying to make sure the books balance at the end of the month.
Vendors get paid.
And yeah, and
Yeah.
yeah, And those aren't the things that I have to worry about, which it
Right.
allows me to go upstream in thinking about the future of the industry that we serve
Right.
and these big, bold things that we would never do if you're focused in. So there's just you've got to recognize it all works together. An organization, all the parts and pieces. And man, when they are working and people are taking care of their side of the street, they're part of the house, then you got to recognize, thank, and be grateful for it.
So I want to call you out on that in a grateful way, having been in a support function pretty much my whole career.
Yeah.
You want them to be quiet. I think of a Peter Drucker statement.
Yeah.
If you're ever in a factory, he did a lot of his early management consulting working in manufacturing facilities, and he said,
Hmm.
an exciting manufacturing plant is not a good thing. You want it quiet and just humming along.
Sure.
If internal controls or payables or payroll are ever getting lots of management attention, that's not a good thing.
Right.
And so thank you for taking time to call out your support folks, your
Yeah.
finance folks. I had a boss who called us the stinking accountants.
The
Thank
stinking
you for
accountants.
calling them out and appreciating that because it often goes unacknowledged, but
Yeah.
you couldn't do what you're doing without it.
No, and we get to do really cool and exciting stuff. I tell this story, you'll laugh, and not in any way to. It's probably says more about me than anything. During COVID, we had this big office that was empty, and we had those little creamer packets, the little, I don't know what the Land O'Lakes or whatever they are. I don't even know.
The powder
And
ones,
no, not the powder ones. Now we weren't that destitute. We had, the
okay.
ones with the liquid in it, but it's not refrigerated, and it's
Yeah,
going to
right,
like,
right.
how does this
Yes, yes.
work?
Hmm.
And I go in the kitchen, make a cup of coffee, and I sometimes drink cream, sometimes I don't. But I dump it in there, and I'd kind of stir it around, and I'd be like, it's weird how those kind of clump up like that a little bit. I was like, I guess they've always done it, and I'm a dumb guy, and I'm drinking away for months. And then, it occurs to me they probably aren't supposed to do that. They probably just been in there for like 6 months while we started to transition into.
So you brought your Geiger counter with you next time
Yeah, right.
in your hazmat suit?
I had this moment where I was like, it was somebody's job to come in and change those out when they sat there for too long. And that person hasn't been here in a long time.
Hmm.
And I really appreciate that person. Now. Took me way too long to get there, and I drank way too many cups of contaminated coffee, probably. But whatever.
Well, that helps explain some things, but
That's why my immunity is so good.
here you go.
Sure.
But I'm grateful that you as a leader acknowledge that, and that's something we as leaders
Yeah.
need to do. So carry on. Tell us some more.
Oh, more about culture,
Or
more
do you
about
want me
the
to
IBAT culture.
throw you a question?
Yeah. I guess it's just I hit on it a moment ago. People ask all the time, well, how do y'all do that? How do you do the remote thing? And how do you maintain culture? Because that's one of the biggest questions I think people have about remote work. And actually, I tell people all the time, like, I don't recommend it. I don't recommend that you do it. We're over a precipice that we have to do it. We've spent the better part of the last 6 years hiring people all over the country, just
Right.
as Austin in particular was one of the most highly priced housing markets in the country. Like, you couldn't find the people, couldn't afford to pay them, and we're still a nonprofit organization at the end of the day. Um, so we have to make it work. We don't have a choice but to make it work.
Right.
But it is really, it takes a lot of intentional work. And what we ask a lot, and this is something I think is as important if you're in person, because you can take it for granted, that we have to ask of ourselves a lot of how do we make sure that everybody has visibility not only into the mission and what our goals are as an organization, but then the process too, right? You it's easy for people to miss out when they're not just within earshot to pick up on kind of like, well,
Right.
this is happening. I heard this is happening. Well, that
Right.
department's doing this. That's also hard in banking too.
Right.
It's hard because you're spread out across geographies, right? Banking really is remote work. You have branches, it's remote work, right? They're disconnected from the central hub. And so asking that question continually, how do we make it feel that everybody feels that that they have some skin in the game, that they're connected to what's going on, that they're connected to what I'm thinking or the management team is thinking, what's important, what isn't important. There's an intentionality there that everybody can learn from that maybe you don't think about when everybody's under the same roof because you just assume that people know.
Yeah, that's good. I'm thinking of one of the other observations I have from being at IBAT events, whether it's when y'all come through town on your whirlwind tour around
Yeah.
Texas or when we're at a conference, we're all together for several days. It has a feeling every time of homecoming
Yeah.
among the bankers. Okay, and I'm a former banker. Now I
Hmm.
still kind of feel like a banker, but I'm not in banking anymore. I'm supporting banking from the side. Y'all are even nice to us vendors that support from the side. But there's this sense of, hey, I'm getting to be with some neat people again. With your staff, if they're all in remote locations much of the time, that's also a homecoming reunion for them too. It's a family reunion every
It
time you get a
is.
conference on.
It is. It's one of the
I'd
rare
never thought
times
about that.
and we don't all get to go to every conference because we
Right.
can't, afford to put people in hotels for every night that we're there. So we have to, but we get to do that too. Some of us get to see each other at all the conferences, and it is awesome. You realize sometimes, like, I don't think I've actually had a one-on-one conversation with that person since we were together in person last time because we just don't have a purpose to interact on
Yeah.
a consistent basis. But it is, too, you hit on something there. We used to have in banking in Texas all these little regional banking groups, like the North, the Panhandle group or the Tri-Cities group or the whatever, the Hill Country group. We used to have all these little gatherings of bankers that happened consistently, maybe not monthly, but quarterly, twice, two, three times a year, and they don't exist anymore. And so you do want to make the most of the time when we do get people together that it is kind of a homecoming, right? It is a chance for people who genuinely like each other, even if they're competitors, for them to interact in a way that they haven't gotten to interact in 6 or 8 months or a year, even.
Right.
I don't look back at the COVID era with a lot of like, wow, that was really great. But one of the gifts that it gave us was appreciation for gathering in person again. And I realized not every place shut down to the same degree, but we did have to, because of limitations, particularly in the metro areas, we were deeply affected as an organization trying to host large gatherings at hotels and things during that period.
Right.
So we
Right.
were forced just by local ordinances and other things to limit what we were doing. But when we got to come back together, people had a renewed vigor for it. You know, I'll never forget. We had a past chairman who was sitting in a strategic planning meeting one time, and he said, going to conventions is a lot like going to the swimming pool. Your kids are like, "Come on, Dad, get in the pool," and you're like, "I've been in the pool. Like, I'm good. Like, I've done the pool plenty." And I know, and it's true, right? Like, you take for granted gathering, being together, anything that makes you appreciate that in a renewed way, and it did. People came back stronger and more frequently after because they wanted that thing that they realized they missed.
Right.
Yeah,
Well, you also brought up something early when you talked about your remoteness and how you had to adapt to this.
yeah,
It forced you to be more intentional about your communication.
very much so.
And I experienced the same when I was at the bank and COVID hit. It was crazy. And
Yeah,
I would carve time out of my day just to check on people. And it
yeah.
wasn't, hey, did you get that reconciliation done? It was, how are you doing?
How are you?
How's your family? And that was important.
We made changes to our review process because
Hmm.
of COVID and because of remote work that to make sure that supervisors were having those kinds of conversations with people, just like, how are you?
Right, right.
Um, because you do, especially when you're when you lose the benefit of nonverbal communication,
Right.
right? If Eric comes in and just looks whipped one day, well, now he can just turn his camera off, right? So you miss it. You miss those cues about maybe what's going on in people's lives.
Right.
You have to be much more intentional in checking in. But two, again, let's not assume that everybody does this perfectly when they're together in person.
It's true.
Hmm.
Well, that leads to a pivot I was wanting to make anyway of
Yeah.
there are some challenges in culture. Talk about some of the challenges.
Well, where do we begin talking about challenges? Um, you know, building culture to me is such a hard it's such a hard balance of, especially, and I think this will resonate with bankers out there too. You've got highly motivated people that you're working with. Hopefully, right? You're able to build a team of high level performers that are personally motivated. I think first just striking that, okay, but like how do you put a little bit of a governor on the engine to say,
Right.
okay, but if you race out to here and we can't all keep up with you for one reason or another, then that's going to cause some issues, right? So, but then you also don't want to restrain people too much. So that's a challenge of kind of high trust, high performance culture. You're trying to find that balance of keeping people with enough leash to just run as best they can, but also not so far that they're dragging the rest on. Um, I think too, uh, man, just the person to person accountability. Your organization, the bank you worked for, was very clear about stating values. We've been very clear about stating values, not values that exist for the outside world, but our internal values. The stake in the ground that says this is how we treat each other.
Right.
This is the way we interact with each other, and
Right.
then living to that and managing to that. It also, it asks the question of people, are you willing to do the work? And are you willing to be mature? Are you willing to step up? So, for instance, if somebody's struggling with somebody else and you say, okay, it really sounds like this value is being violated, and you have to go talk to that person about this, and you have to go to them and say, look, when we had this interaction last week, I felt like this value was being violated, and we need to clear the air. You may not have even intended to, but this is kind of how it went. And that requires a maturity of people,
Right. Some courage.
some courage, some trust.
Right.
And
It
those
does.
things can go sideways real easy, right?
They can.
Um, and that's, but from my perspective, that's what it takes. And if, so what are the challenges that finding people that are willing to engage like that? That's an emotional maturity that most families don't engage with. Right? Husband and wives don't engage that way sometimes. Hey, you know what? Yesterday when you did this, you may not have meant it that way, but this is what I heard, this is what I felt, this is what I experienced. You know, parent.
Right.
So to ask people to come into a workplace and engage like that, it's otherworldly,
Right.
right?
Right.
And the second thing about that too is when you bring people in, convincing them that that's real, that you can engage that way and with maturity. And if it doesn't go well, we need to know about it because we need to work through that. Now we've got a bigger issue.
Right.
People don't trust that because they've never lived it before.
Right.
Yeah.
It's we talk about culture shock when you go geographically from one place to another or one people group to another, but there are also shocks of how different cultures are from workplace to workplace, and
Yeah.
not everybody fits in every one.
There are plenty of people that just flat out would not work in our culture because they are unwilling to have the difficult conversation. And unfortunately, it just you won't work with us. We won't work for you. We're gonna have the hard conversation, and you may go into a full retreat or like put up the guard at that
Right.
point.
Or come on attacking or
Hmm.
yeah.
Yep. Yep. So I guess the answer to your question is the challenges are plentiful.
So I want to tie this topic, and it relates to the challenges in a way, but tie back to the culture and stewardship. We talked more about stewardship in the prior episode.
Hmm.
I have some thoughts on it, but I want to let you run a little bit
Oh, I
with
want your thoughts. Like
my
everybody's
thoughts.
heard from me plenty.
Okay.
I can just react.
You can react.
Yeah.
I'm going to quote some of what you said from the prior episode about stewardship that I've been entrusted, I've got my notes here, for a period of time with some weighty responsibilities.
Hmm.
When I think about culture, the best definition I've come up with for culture is our lived, shared values.
Hmm.
What's important to us, and what are the behaviors that bring those to life?
Yeah.
Now, they're not always admirable because
Mhm.
our aspirational culture and our actual culture may not be the same thing. They may
Yeah.
overlap some. Hopefully, they overlap a lot, but they're not always the same. But that sense of, as a steward, I'm seeking to cultivate trust. My responsibilities are weighty, including my responsibilities that have cultural implications. And pretty much everything does, directly or indirectly.
Yeah.
How we treat people,
Yep.
what's important to us, and it's how we treat all the people. How do we
Yes.
how do we treat the high performers? How do we treat the struggling performers? How do we treat that pesky vendor who doesn't know when to take no for an answer? How do we treat that regulator who has agency authority but is still just learning banking? I
Right.
worked with a predecessor at Happy. She said, we've got to train a new batch about every other year or so. And it's not their fault. They can't
No.
help it that they're brand new puppies coming into regulating. But those challenges of the relationships, and if we view culture as part of our stewardship responsibility, where it's not about me, I get a lot of benefit out of it, but it's
Sure.
fundamentally about something else I'm trying to foster, cultivate for the long term, where it's stronger when I'm gone, not because I've gone, but because I've cultivated well along the way,
Sure.
right? Okay, I'm done. You react.
Uh, my reaction is that the biggest failure that I see is most people never do what you said, which is to identify the aspirational culture. What are we aiming? What are we aiming for?
Right.
Right? I've never
What's
put
that
that
stake
stake
in
in
the
the ground.
ground?
Yep. The stake in the ground is everything. It's the basis by which I judge our interactions. It's the basis upon which I'm living up to the promises that I say as your leader. This is what you can expect from me. If I'm not, I I have accountability. I have accountability to the people that have given me their lives, a part of their lives, their talent, their innate gifts. They came and entrusted that time away from their family. Those gifts, like God gave them, they
Right.
entrusted that to me and said, I put them in your hands, put me to work. Now I have a responsibility to them.
Steward that well.
Steward that well. And if I don't tell them, here's what you can expect from me, and if I don't live up to it, then I need you to tell me because then I've got a problem. Or either, sometimes it's just that you don't understand, you don't see the big picture.
Right.
Sometimes that's the case, or sometimes it's you're right. I've literally just I failed to hit the mark that I set for myself. But man, first step in building that is to say this is what we're shooting for,
Right.
right?
And we will get there imperfectly because we're humans. But
Amen.
if we never state expectations, how will we know? Take a quick side note on that. Sometimes when I'm talking with people about accountability, doing workshops on accountability, I will draw a little diagram of somebody who's failing to meet expectations. The
Yeah.
expectations are out here. The stronger the performance, the bigger the circle gets. And if the performance is all inside that circle where it's not meeting expectations in any sense, as a leader, often my default reaction is stupid person, bad employee.
Sure.
Maybe, but I
Could
need to
be.
pause and say, did I make a bad hiring decision? Did I
Yep.
not find somebody that was an appropriate match for the role? Did I put them in the wrong job? Did I even tell them what I expect?
Yeah.
Often we as leaders don't, we expect people to figure it out. And not even just about tasks, it's about what's important to us. If we don't put that stake in the ground, how are people going to know what we expect of them?
When I became CEO at IBAT, I was about 90% sure who of the existing team was going to work and who wasn't. Um, I could have on day one come in and said, you're gone, you're gone, you're gone, you're not, new day, new sheriff, we're going to change. We did an exercise where we actually kicked the staff out of the office for the last 2 weeks of the year before. So the last the 2 weeks prior to me taking a January 1 CEO
So you could
role.
go update all the creamer, right?
Yeah, exactly. Got to get new creamer. So all pre-COVID, we redesigned some spaces inside. We did some stuff. We made everybody come in day one of my CEO and have an all staff meeting, in which we said, first day, we all work for a new organization today. Here's what's expected. I asked for grace for the people that I knew were going to be my top level leaders. I went to them and I said, look, here's the deal. I don't think these 5 people are going to work out, but we've never given them a chance to aim for something. You know, we have, but let's just say there's new expectations and we're articulating them with more clarity than we've ever articulated them before.
Right.
So I think we owe it to them to give them a chance to hit the thing that we've established, to shoot for the stake in the ground, right? To mix metaphors. And it's never failed in my view that when you're going through that process of trying to manage somebody to that stake in the ground, if you're clear and articulate with the other people on your team that like, hey, yeah, I understand, I see the issues, but we're gonna give them a chance and we're gonna give this kind of at least a time bound, it's not just a performance improvement plan. It's have we stated those expectations clearly enough to allow them to fail or to succeed.
Right.
And then we'll make a determination. Now, Eric, some of those people didn't even try to change to what was being expected.
So they self-selected.
They self-selected. They knew. One of them said when we went when the day came that we said, and I said, why didn't this work? And she looked at me and said, well, I just didn't really believe that, that if things change. Okay, that was your choice. That was your choice. That's actually sad. You just relieved me of a tremendous burden, also a little bit, right? Like, but that's really where I know I'm jumping all over the place, but just to say the clarity, clarity is caring, as Brene Brown says. And if we care, and as steward leaders, we ought to care about the people that have been given to us and entrusted to our care, then we owe it to them to be as clear as possible.
Right. That's good.
Yeah.
When it comes down to it, everything's about people anyway.
Yeah.
Now, we finance people. I, as a finance person, it's easy
Yeah.
to get lost in the numbers, but there's a person on the other side of every number too.
Sure.
So it's always all about people. So,
Always.
wow. Okay. Anything you want to say in our remaining little bit of time?
Just a little bit of time. No, I love the part of the job that allows us to deal with these people issues. It's the hardest part of the job, but boy, I said it either in this discussion or the one before. Never underestimate what can happen when you give people permission to be human. And part of being human is we all have our wants, our needs. That's one level of our hierarchy of needs. We all have the need at the tip of the triangle of self-actualization, to feel like we're part of a mission.
Right.
And that we're rising to that mission, and that we're able to put all those gifts and skills and everything to work. When you get that chance to truly see somebody living in that kind of self-actualization phase of their hierarchy of needs, there is nothing more amazing. There's nothing more soul inspiring from my point of view. And it's what makes all of this junk, and there's lots of junk when it comes to dealing with people, it makes all of it worth it. So that's the challenge. Do the hard work, all the stuff we've just talked about. Do the hard work to establish clarity, to aim for it, to communicate, because that's what's on the other side.
Right.
Not just high financial performance, not just, but high human performance.
High human performance and
Yeah.
high value creation, value broadly construed for real people.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Well, there's lots here for all of us as steward leaders to be thinking about. Christopher, I'm delighted you took time for today's conversation and for the one previous, if I didn't say it already. Go listen to that if you hadn't heard it yet. Good stuff, amigo. Thanks so much.
It's a gift. Thank you, my friend. God bless.
God bless. Thanks for listening to Steward Leaders. If this conversation was helpful, you can find more episodes and additional resources at stewardleaderspodcast.com. Leadership is temporary. Stewardship is about forever.